this on?
It is on.
Okay, all right. Welcome to this lovely day. Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad to see you all, and we hope to have a wonderful program for you. The first order of business is to call Olivia Schellenberg up, one of our interns this summer, and her father, if he wishes to come, that we have a presentation to make. Hi, Olivia. Olivia is a high school student, and she spent many hours during the summer working here. And if you've ever been upstairs, you know what that means, that it's so hot and every hour feels like 3 or something like that, you know. And she worked very hard archiving things for us and also cataloging glass plate negatives. And many of them will appear in the next publication that we're thinking about, photos of Sudbury and old Sudbury times. So Olivia, we're very happy to present this to you and hope you continue good work all around. Thank you very much and congratulations. Thank you very much. The next person I'd like to mention is Ruth Griselle, because she was the one who introduced us to the idea of the 50th anniversary coming up, and possibly we'd be able to do a program around the Savoyards. So thank you very much, Ruth. Okay. And now I'll turn the program over to Andrea, and she'll give us all a wonderful view of the Sudbury Savoyards through the years.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. I have a microphone. I assume it's on. Welcome to 50 years of the Sudbury Savoyards in about an hour. Ready?
If you want to know who we are, gentlemen of Japan, on many a boss and John, on many a screen and
On April 27th and 28th in 1961, an evening of music was presented as a way to raise funds to go. Master of Ceremonies was Elroy Haas, and part 2 of the evening was a performance of Gilbert and Sullivan's Trial by Jury, with Priscilla Davis as Director of Dramatics and Betty Farmer as Director of Music, accompanied by Dean Aldrich. Staged in the Parish Hall, which is now called Haas Hall, and costumed largely with choir robes, this was the beginning of a group later to be christened the Sudbury Savoyards. Proceeds raised from this event were $872.90.
Ken and I were president of the couples club, and each group in the church was asked to do a fundraiser for the sanctuary. And we thought in the middle of the night one night came to me, Gilbert and Sullivan, I know where I can get the scores. We can borrow the ones from Reading High School, which you had taught there, and I knew that they had done a trial by jury. And that's what we did. And so we had quite a few from outside of the group that we thought we'd have at the beginning. Well, as soon as we finished, they started talking about the stage there in Parish Hall was too small. Why did we move to the town hall? And also, instead of just a piano, let's get an orchestra. The orchestra was not easy to come by. I spent hours on the telephone trying to round up all the people for the orchestra.
In 1962, the orchestra numbered 9 members, including Betty's husband Ken on trombone. Chorus scores cost 20 cents at the time. The wonderful black and white photos you will see today were taken by church member and longtime Sudbury resident Vic Newmeyer. The early performance photos are just some of the 1,700 slides taken by Warren Colson and donated to us by his family. Unfortunately, there was no production in 1965. In 1967, Iolanthe was presented on the Town Hall stage with a new director of dramatics, Lawrence Haworth, who had been involved since he first appeared in the chorus of Trial by Jury, establishing a 20-year tenure with the group, and Will Ford began his long history on the production side. Rent for the Town Hall was $2 an hour, for a total expense of $84. The police details cost $3 an hour. Tickets were $2 for adults and 50 cents for children.
Called me one night and asked if I would be co-chairman for this new thing called the Savoyards, which I remembered had been started up during the last couple of years before we went to England, but we've never really had much to do with it other than going to, I think, one or two of the productions. They were then held in the town hall. Anyway, it turned out that the job of co-chairman was a stepping stone, because the next year Jim stepped aside and left me holding the bag as chairman. But it was fun and I enjoyed it, and I didn't realize it was going to be a 17-year occupation. But you may realize when you look at some of the names in those early programs, there was a lot of overlap between the Sudbury Players and the Savoyards. The church had by no means the kind of talent it took to provide leads for the kind of shows Gilbert and Sullivan wrote, and so we had to immediately go outside the church for lead material. We had a few in the church who could do the job, but an awful lot of the players were heavily involved. Not only Laurie Haworth, but Mike Weinstein, Frank Sherman. Plus, the overlap was also seen in the fact that where we not only used the town hall stage, which the Sudbury Players had outfitted with lighting and all the things they needed for their shows, but we also shared the orchestra pit. We also stored the sets in an old barn that one of the players owned out at his house on the corner of Dutton Road and Hudson Road. About the second or third year that we were in the town hall, they had a problem because their insurance suddenly notified them that they had to have a fireproof curtain for the stage curtain, and they didn't have one. So all productions were shut down at the town hall for a year or two, and I can't remember what the Sudbury Players did, but we moved up to the high school.
Something that's where you be gone. Your notions don't any are not worth a penny, no word for your guidance is wrong. A very good bargain.
That was the year that we moved to the high school, bigger productions, bigger and bigger, and the year of the great snowstorm on the great Sunday rehearsal. And I can remember the snow coming up to the windows of the cars out in the lot, and the Schaeffers, who were a musical family and played viola and violin and cello, I guess, and so forth, had a Volkswagen. I think they came from Bedford or somewhere, and they were snowed in, and I can remember taking their Volkswagen, a bunch of us, and heaving it onto the plowed part of the road so we could get them off and home. And that was a night that I never made it home all the way. I got as far as the church parking lot and wound up sleeping in the parsonage. So Frank Sherman was in Betty's first production and was really our lead, probably the best singer of the group, yeah, for the first few years there to get us rolling.
In 1970, Laurie Howarth sent out an open invitation to both singers and musicians from surrounding towns. To quote him, "The Sudbury Savoyards is a unique organization which has no bylaws, no officers, no dues, and no meetings. The only requirement for membership is an interest in the performance of Gilbert and Sullivan operettas. In 1971, we start to see some difficulties in scheduling our desired performance dates with the high school. Frankly, nothing has changed in the last 40 years. Ticket prices rose to $2.50 for adults and $1 for children. In 1972, Patience was presented for the first time, and the word United also appeared for the first time of our sponsor, the Sudbury United Methodist Church. Joe Plonko was the treasurer, and records show that $1,142.15 was donated to the church. Between 1972 and 73, and then again in 1976, the company benefited from an influx of second-generation Savoyards. This included Roy and Bev's daughter Sue Perro, Mary Lee Marsh, Donna Rossler, and yours truly. Back then, there was an unwritten rule that one had to be 16.
The great oil embargo, when OPEC, I don't remember the exact circumstances, they were limiting shipments of oil to the United States. We had lines at gas stations that went for several blocks. Prices went to what we thought were appallingly sky high at that time, but would probably be cheap by today's standards. And the high school canceled all reservations for use of the property and refused to heat any of the spaces that weren't needed for school needs, for classrooms and that sort of thing. So the high school auditorium just wasn't available during the heating season. And so we had to postpone the show till April. And it turned out to be a disaster. As the years went on, was less and less involvement from people from the church. There were a couple of old regulars. We had Dick Sewell and the Perrows, the Sheets, and myself and Laurie. But it became more and more an operation that was staffed, at least in the cast, by people from outside the church. And matter of fact, that was what led to our planning on making the funds available for relief of world hunger. In the early 70s, it became apparent that the church people had less and less involvement with the cast. And we had a great many people who were not only from the church, many of them were Jewish. They came from all over the Boston area rather than just from Sudbury. And up until that point, we'd been putting our profits just into the church budget as another source of income. And I started to be uncomfortable with asking people who had nothing to do with the church to put in the kind of rehearsal time that it took to put the show on. So Shep Johnson at the time was our minister, and we had a couple of conversations about what we ought to be, what changes we ought to make, and what we did with the profits, and finally decided that Encore, which was still a Methodist organization, but had a much broader appeal, was probably a good place to put the profits.
In 1978, when we presented The Mikado for the third time, not only did our beneficiary change, but Betty Farmer put down her baton that year. Our new director of music was Will Sherwood, who was also the organist at the Methodist Church. Ticket prices rose to $3.50 for adults, high school students were $2.50, and children were still $1. Appearing in the playbill for the first time was the statement, "Every dollar of profit from the Mikado will be donated to the Methodist Committee on Relief to help relieve the problems of world hunger." The net for that year were $1,032.27. In 1981, we presented The Pirates of Penzance for the third time, one of the GNS Big Three in popularity. Lawrence Howarth continued to direct and was assisted by Sally Osborne with a new conductor, David Larrick. In 1982, Princess Ida was presented for the second time with Walter Reed as the new stage director, along with Maestro Larrick.
sea or the bright blue sea, we stand to our guns all day. When at length we'll be right on the ports of time, we never get time for play. Ahoy, ahoy, whistle free. Ahoy, ahoy, the bright blue sea, we stand to our guns all day. We sail the ocean blue, and a saucy ship's of beauty, with a sober men and true, and attentive to our duty. A saucy ship's of beauty, and attentive to our duty, with sober men and true, we sail the ocean blue.
The fickle crew have deserted Reginald and sworn allegiance.
By 1984, the people within the church who had been supporting the Sudbury Savoyards all these years, originally, as I say, as a church fundraiser, were getting burned out, were less motivated to support what were, in effect, a bunch of strangers, and frankly, less motivated to support world hunger as opposed to building the sanctuary of the church. And so they were, as I say, ready for a change. And it fell to Will Ford to pass along the word that the existing organizational structure wouldn't continue, that the performances could continue if somehow a new organization was formed from among the performers. All of the leaders of the productions, as I say, were Methodist Church people, except for the artistic leaders, Michael Cashman and myself. We were the only ones who were not of the Methodist Church that were involved. So rather than sit everyone down and break this news, Will Ford chose Michael and me and Sally and probably a couple of others I don't remember to explain all this to. And somehow I was the one that was chosen to write it down, write up a call to arms and distribute it to the membership, and that was the organizational realities of the Sudbury Savoyards. Apparently it worked, because enough people heeded the call, came forward, said, yes, this is worth preserving. Let's find out what all that behind-the-scenes stuff is that we never knew was happening, but we know we rely on. Let's figure out how to do it ourselves. And by the next year, the new organization was in place and functioning, and produced Yeomen of the Guard.
Our silver anniversary season presented the Mikado for the 4th time, another of the big 3, and this is our first recorded video we have in our archives. The Sudbury Savoyards was growing. The chorus alone numbered 31 women and 22 men, plus 9 leads and a 28-piece orchestra, which is probably our first hint that we can do Gilbert and Sullivan on a grand scale. The invoice from Lincoln Sudbury totaled $668.56, and in May of that year we made a donation to World Hunger Relief in the amount of $5,000, with a second donation in November of $1,500. In 1988, Utopia Limited was presented for the first time, which is little known and one of the last collaborations of the G&S duo, taking place on a South Sea island and poking fun at Victorian customs and traditions. This was directed by Michael Cashman with Barry Singer as conductor. Rent and fees cost us almost $1,200. HMS Pinafore, the third operetta in the Big Three, was presented only for the third time in 1989 and as a single production. Ticket prices saw a bit of an increase to $7 for adults and $5 for seniors and students. In the minutes of the January board meeting, under the high school report, it stated, "We will be able to use Lincoln Sudbury at last year's prices, but this is the last time." A donation was made totaling $6,800 for that year.
Just the sort of ration I enjoy. Just the sort of ration you enjoy. But we gotta enjoy it too. Only there's a problem that you don't need you. You should talk about tomorrow. Have you seen it since it's over? But you said you'll even try to raise him, sir. Everybody keep his eyes to the low. All the best you know that you don't need you. In the trouble of tomorrow. Have you seen it since it's over? But you said you'll even try to raise him, sir. All the best you know that you don't raise him, sir. You're a trouble of tomorrow. From the sinner, sinner, sinner.
After a 12-year absence, the Sudbury Savoyards presented the Pirates of Penzance with the largest chorus in our 32-year history, 62. And that didn't include the 10 leading characters. Sally Osborne made her debut as stage director, along with first-time music director Jim Revan. The women's chorus was so large that a few of us Major General Stanley's wards defected to the pirate crew, which was badly in need of tenors. That's me on the right. In 1994, Patience was presented for the third time with assistant music director Kathy Legue, who also held the title role. The role of Bunthorne's solicitor was played by Massachusetts State Rep Hasty Evans. The economy wasn't in great shape and our donation amounts were decreasing. Digital was announcing layoffs and Wang was in Chapter 11, companies where a number of our members were employed. Lincoln Sudbury charged us a flat fee of $5,000 for the use of the school and equipment, and we were able to make a donation of
In
$2,000.
'95, I was asked by Sally Osborne, presumably because I did such a great job with David Larrick in '94, to be the stage co-director for Mikado. And again, I was sort of, does that mean I can't audition? Because I wanted to audition for Yum Yum. And they said, well, no, not necessarily, but here's the situation. And that's basically when I realized that how sick Sally was with the cancer that actually would eventually kill her. Because it wasn't in the '93 show when it was actually kind of announced to the cast. So while I knew this was really the first interactions I'd had with Sally since. So I think, I don't even remember if I did an audition or if I decided not to, because they were very upfront about it, that I might have to take over. And I don't know, but I believe the board might have had some trepidation about having Sally direct at all, just in case. But again, because of Sally's history, and I support them wholeheartedly if this was indeed their decision to let her do it. And in October, November, when we were having these discussions, it seemed like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to help out, that'll be fine. But unfortunately, Sally took a pretty severe turn for the worst, I think, just after Christmas. And while she was still coming to rehearsals, she was finding it very difficult. And so I had to step in.
Then in '96, I think I pretty much acted alone when I wanted to put together a summer production that would take advantage of the Sudbury Savoyards mailing list, collection of Victorian costumes, and competence in putting on theater. And also the fact that the church facility was pretty much unused all summer because, as the old joke in the area goes, God goes to the Cape, don't you know? And it seemed to me that combination of opportunities was too good to pass up.
What's a Sudbury 4th of July parade without floats? Having a division of bicycle decorating for my tricycle back in never mind. My sister Donna and I saw this golden opportunity to not only promote our new summer production, but the Sudbury Savoyards in general. That the power lines on Concord Road are extremely low, causing us to lower our pirate mast on more than one occasion along the route. '98 was the last time we presented Trial by Jury and HMS Pinafore as a double bill production. Bill Coleman was stage director for Trial, and Kathy LeGue was stage director for Pinafore, as well as the music director for both shows. A couple of things happened this year. The official position of archivist was created, which I and my basement still hold today. And an official company logo was designed by Deborah Goss, the daughter of one of our members. This was the year the school informed us that they would prefer we use a school vacation week, either April or February, to minimize conflicts with school events. So in 1999, we presented Iolanthe in April with stage and music direction by Kathy LeGue. One great thing about the Sudbury Savoyards is they have been known to serve as a training ground for novices interested in trying their talents in new ways. I had never designed a set of this scale before and expressed an interest and was given the job for this production. I loved my tree. I thought it was great to be able to saw and paint outdoors in the nice spring weather until the paint dried faster than we could roll it on. April vacation was not a popular time for the majority of the cast or the audience. In 2000, Ruddigore is presented for the 4th time, but in February, with an extended run of 2 weekends, following Tom Power's suggestion that we use the school vacation week as our tech week. Kathy LeGue was stage director, with Steve Malionik making his debut as music director. Ticket prices remained the same, but the rental was up to $7,000. By the way, our 2012 production will be Ruddigore.
Sorcerer is a difficult play because the hero is really not a very likable person, if you call the hero the tenor, Alexis, because he really kind of plays this nasty trick on the entire village. It all turns out badly, even though he's kind of been warned that this night might not be the best thing to do. It turns against him, and, oh, well, you know, it was fine for everybody except me, and now that it's not working, well, I don't want this to happen anymore. And what can happen? What can we do about it? And, well, the deal is, well, either he or the sorcerer who actually casts the spell basically has to go to hell. And everyone decides it's the sorcerer, and I'm like, that's not really right. You know, he did what he was asked to do. It was Alexis's idea. So I think a lot of people have that feeling for sorcerer, and, you know, between the theater tales of, you know, the Mystery of Edwin Drood, where people vote, that had come out a couple of years earlier. I sort of had this, you know, everybody always kids around about this. Oh, we should have people vote, and, you know, Alexis should go, not Wells. And I said, why don't we just put it up to a vote? So, so we worked it out that we were going to have cards in the audience, and I specifically asked the lighting people of what colors would show up best from someone on stage going into the house. What could they see? And they said, well, yellow and red would probably be the best. Okay, so one side was yellow, one side was red. One side had an A for Alexis, the other side had W for Wells. And I said, oh, all right, Cass, this is what we're going to do. And I gave the notary, because he's actually the first person who says, die thou. And of course, in the score, he's supposed to indicate Wells. That was Tony Parks, and I took Tony aside. I said, it's your decision. You're the one that's going to see it. You decide based on what you see. And then I told the cast, I don't care what you see, you go with Tony, because he's the one that's going to decide. They're like, oh, okay, you know, yeah, we get it, we get it. I think Alexis went 5 out of 7.
I submit, my fate is sealed to popular opinion. Thus I yield. Be happy all, leave me to my despair. I go, it matters not with whom or where.
We presented Patience for the 4th time in 2003. I tried my hand as set designer again, and Tom Powers was the set construction chief, whose job it was to build whatever I came up with. It's amazing what you can actually get away with in theater. The balusters may look like real concrete to the audience, but they were really foam injected into molds. The grassy knoll may look like was really gold shag carpet, spray painted a lovely shade of meadow green. And I wanted columns, so Tom, being ingenious when it comes to using materials for theatrical purposes, went down the street to tie sails and got sewer pipes. He must have seen the look on my face and nonchalantly added, "Don't worry, they're clean." I later calculated that the set weighed over 1,200 pounds that year.
The Yeoman of Regard did turn out to be something more like a Lifetime Achievement Award than a Savoyard of the Year, which is quite consistent with my vision for it, because we wanted to go back and capture the history, the contributions of people who were gone, maybe forgotten, or still around but not recognized for what they'd done. So we came up with a set of criteria, and the catchphrase, I used to repeat it all the time, has left me from time to time, but it's exemplary service in fulfilling the goals of the Savoyards, and that breaks down into creating some founding effort for the things that make the group what it is, the existence of the summer show, the continuity of the parade float, extraordinary accomplishment, either artistic or technical, in terms of carrying the group forward. In some ways, life-saving efforts. If the group were ever in danger of dissolving, when somebody would find a way to hold it together by writing a letter of support. Those are the things that we would look forward to. And so many of the early honorees were people I had in mind, people like Sally and David, and of course the founders, Betty Farmer and Laurie Harworth, and all the people who got the group off the ground and developed enough momentum for it to exist on its own after the first 4 or 5 or 6 years. These are the people that I thought were the models for what the Yeoman should be.
In October of 2003, the Sudbury Savoyards' first annual craft fair took place at the church. Over the years, many of us had been killing time at rehearsals and backstage, knitting, sewing. My sister and I noticed this, and being crafters ourselves, we came up with the idea of holding a craft fair as yet another way for the Savoyards to raise funds for world hunger relief. The first fair took place in Hawes Hall, and we managed to donate $800 that first year. We soon had to increase the space in order to accommodate the number of crafters that were applying by expanding into the chapel and then into one classroom and then other. As a result, we have managed to donate over $12,000 in the 8 years of the craft fairs. Our 9th annual craft fair will take place on Saturday, October 8th. We presented The Pirates of Penzance for the 5th time and as the last production in the old Lincoln Sudbury Auditorium. A new school was being constructed and scheduled to open. One of our biggest fans on the Sudbury Police Force, Officer Rocky Conrado, was bestowed with honorary Savoyard for his many years of participation and support.
Oh,
general, like information, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know kings of England, and I quote the fight historical from Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical. I'm very well acquainted with matters mathematical. I understand equations both the simple and quadratical. About binomial theorem, I'm teeming with a lot of news. Not a news. Ah! With many truthful facts about the square of the hypotenuse. I'm very good at integral and differential calculus. I know the scientific names of beings and amalgamus. Short, that is vegetable, animal, and mineral. I am the very model of a modern nature general.
Oh, sisters, death to get his name, a shame. It's true that he has gone astray, Is that a reason good and true? You should all be deaf to pet his name. The question is, had he not been a thing of beauty? Would she be swayed by quite as keen a sense of duty? For shame, for shame, for shame.
When the foeman bears his field, comfortable field, and we find a wiser state. Slap our chests and sing forward threatened with the youths, and your heart is in your boots.
The Mikado was presented in 2005 in the new Rogers Kirshner Theater and was directed by the Kathy and Steve team. It was very exciting to be in a brand new space with all new equipment, as well as a bit hard to get used to. As set designer, the first two things I had to consider were, there is now no way to get from stage right to stage left unless you go out through the lobby and around through the music room. And we need to remember to paint the tops of the set because there is now a balcony. The rent for our new location was $10,000, and combined with the proceeds of the 2004 summer show and the fall craft fair, we were able to donate $13,000 to UMCOR that year.
In 2005, I proposed doing The Grand Duke to the Board of Trustees. This is an operetta that's rarely performed. It's not as well known as some of the others. It's rather long. It's got a convoluted storyline. It's one of the operettas that Gilbert and Sullivan didn't do much cutting in. It was at the end of their careers. It's the last one they wrote. So it doesn't get performed that often. But I had found a CD of it, and I had been listening to the music. I didn't really know the story all that well, but listening to the music over and over again, it started growing on me. And I said, boy, this is a fun song. This is a fun song. So I started looking into the possibility of the Sudbury Savoyards doing it. They had never done it in the history of the organization. And I knew it needed work, a lot of work, because you know, editing an operetta is not an easy task, and knowing what to cut, you know, what do you cut, you know, how to get it to a reasonable time slot, how to get the storyline so that the audience will understand it, and get it and fit it in one night of theater. So the more I thought of, enjoyed the music and thought of how to do this, I presented it to the board, and they fortunately agreed to do it that year, and then work began.
But I've been engaged to him for the last 20 years. 20 years?
There, my dear. They can't get over that. Take him. He's yours. And hold him as tight as you can.
My own.
Here's another! The fourth in 24 hours! Would anybody else like to marry me? You, man! Oh, you! Anybody! I'm getting used to it. Forbids the bands. Forbids the bands.
Well, you're a pretty kind of fellow, thus my life to shatter. My little store of gold and silver, recklessly you scatter. You guzzle and you warm and dines all day with cup and platter. And you buy food and drink my wine, especially the latter.
Lovers caught me talking to another.
Oh, 5 or 7 years ago.
I tell her very plainly that the lady is my mother.
Taradiddle, toddle, day.
She will relieve my statement and declares we must be parted because on a career of double dealing I've started. Then gives her hand to one of you and leaves him broken-hearted.
Taradiddle, toddle, day.
For cruel ones to separate two lovers from each other.
Oh, 5 or 7 down the road.
You've done him an injustice, for the lady is his mother.
Taradiddle, toddle, day.
That fable perhaps they serve as turn as well as any other. I didn't see her face, but if they fondled one another, and she's but 17, I don't believe he was his mother. Taradiddle, taradiddle.
Toddle, day. For as a temple Romeo, to sing songs to every know. Mingle the life and
There are people who absolutely can't stand Gilbert and Sullivan. You know, my father was one of them. He says, I'll come and support you, but they're all alike. You just change the costumes year after year. So I think the summer show aspect does hit a target market that normally are not going to come see a Gilbert and Sullivan show, or they're not around in the wintertime. We've done small, farces and comedies, and we've done some Gilbert written shows. We've done Noel Coward. We did a Neil Simon once, California Suite, which was the last year we performed in Haas Hall because the temperature is just unbearable. It was one of our heat waves, and we lost the majority of our audience before the play was over. So we moved up to Curtis Middle School, which is air conditioned. Though we're paying a lot more to do it, we've been able to get a lot of our audience back. A historical first took place with the cancellation of the opening night performance on Friday, February 22nd.
I've asked the question of other people, was there ever a year the show almost didn't go on? And I have to answer that question myself, because we did a production of The Yeoman of the Guard, which we now actually don't say that name out loud anymore. We call it the Tower Play.
Had more than the usual stress and illness for a subreduction, resulting in these two pre-curtain announcements of understudies, which we never officially take into consideration. Due to the illness of Maestro Thomas Dawkins, stage manager Jim Revan was promoted to conductor for much of the second weekend's performances, and director Paula Morovic was hospitalized with pneumonia, missing the final performances. A cast member passed away a few weeks before opening. The timpanist's car broke down on his way to a performance, so he never arrived. Snow fell on our closing performance day, but fortunately for us, the school was able to clear the lots. We were now paying $13,000 for the use of the space. And people wonder why we now call it the Tower Play. We're afraid to say the name out loud.
Discover what it is to be a lover. Some young lady is selected, poor perhaps but well connected, whom you hail for love is blind, as the queen of fairy kind. Though she's plain, perhaps unsightly, makes her face up laces tightly. In her form your fancy traces all the gifts of all the graces. Rivals none the maiden woo, so you take her and she takes you. We are yes, of course, like gods. Sons are we, masculine in sex. Yes, 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 masculine in sex.
Expressive glances shall be our lances, and pops of celery are like artillery. We'll storm their bowers with scented showers of fairest flowers that we can buy.
and such frivolity will prove our quality. A sweet profusion of soft allusion, this bold intrusion shall justify.
For God is wise, that love is light, and always sigh thereon illumined eyes. That this I call a fervent you have come to, the rays that from before, that from thee fall.
The invention of the shirt was both practical and political, in the sense of as our production values have grown over the years and the number of people who deal with technical issues has grown, we've needed to identify those people. Other organizations have uniforms for their technical staff, for their run staff, and so forth. And it also worked very nicely in connection with the politics of the organization to draw attention to the cohesiveness of the technical crews. So I coined the phrase. I take credit for it, although there are people who say that I must have pulled it from other references elsewhere. Tech is what keeps the cast from performing pale and naked on a dark, empty stage. And it scans well and includes most of the technical disciplines. I could get props and sound in there in a way that made everything balance, but it's become an amazingly popular attribute of the company. As we've brought in other people who see the shirt and want the shirt, they take the shirt, they wear it to other companies and helps our recruiting. Other companies have taken the slogan as their own, and that's fine too, because I think it's a wonderful description about what the technical disciplines do, and technical disciplines in many cases get far too little credit in their own organizations. So if other people want to build on this practical and political aspect of it, I think it's great. The back of the shirt says, Gilbert and Sullivan on a grand scale since 1961. And there aren't too many companies that can steal that. So that's still ours.
Did you find that?
That phrase came from David Larrick as well, and I think it might have been just an off-the-cuff comment on his regard one time in reference to who we are. But that's another element of publicity and promotion that I've used ever since we did the shirts, in many contexts, because there aren't a lot of community theater groups that can field as big a cast with as cohesive a technical organization to pull off full staging, to stick an almost 30-piece orchestra in the pit and get everybody rehearsing and performing together. You'd be hard-pressed to find too many community theater groups that can pull that together with the continuity that we have. So, $185,000 in the last 20 or 30 years is an amazing contribution to a charity that works so well with our sponsor, Sudbury United Methodist Church. The saying of all proceeds devoted to the relief of world hunger is a wonderful hook to put on to get people to recognize things. One of the amazing things about that money is that it reflects 100% of what the Savoyards have realized monetarily over those times. The fact that every penny of that is charity. None of that money went to any of the members in compensation for their services. And it's an unusual group that doesn't manage to give at least a stipend for personal activity within the group. I think it's a wonderful number. I wish it could be much larger, on the other hand, because there are costs that the Savoyards have to maintain that eat into that in a frightening way. The cost of cloth to make costumes, and the rental charges for equipment and of course the rent of the performance venue itself are expenses that make the grand scale feasible, but regrettably chew into it. But I think that on the whole, because of the charitable nature of the organization and its very bylaws, it's a wonderful donation. We can get to 200,000 in short order. We will make an enormous milestone.
13 stage directors, 11 music directors, and 49 years have paved the way to our production of Trial by Jury and Well, I hope you've enjoyed this express presentation, which is actually a prelude to our big anniversary weekend celebration, which is taking place May 15th and 16th at the Methodist Church. Could I ask, how many of you were either in the video or are a member of the Savoyards? Please stand up. Thank you. Without you, we couldn't have gone to $185,000 in donations. And as Tom said, we're hoping to break $200,000 in our 50th anniversary year. Please check out the little museum we have here. This is also a little prelude to what will be going on in May. We've got some great treasures from the archives, the original playbills, some original posters, the sewer pipe set is over there. You can sign up for our mailing list if you'd like to receive our newsletters and our emails. We also have patron donation forms there just to help us get a little bit ahead towards the 200,000, please. We will also be selling tickets. We have our ticket chief, Jamie Cobley, in the back there, so he's going to station himself at the door while you're leaving. And I would now like to introduce to you, who are all Sudbury residents, I might add, the founder of the Sudbury Savoyards, Betty Farmer, our technical expert, Tom Powers, who's also our former chairman, our newsletter editor, and our stage director for the 2011 production of HMS Pinafore, Kathy Legue, and we'll have questions or comments. We have refreshments over there, and please feel free to field questions. Betty?
I just thought there were a couple other stories you might like to know. This really wasn't going to happen. Roy Haas had his way. We would have done a minstrel show. And I said, I absolutely thought a church shouldn't be doing a minstrel show. So we did get to do the Gilbert and Sullivan. The other thing is the snowstorm that Roy talked about in '69. I was 8.5 months pregnant. I got as far as my brother's house and didn't get home for 3 days after that one. So we have a lot of good memories.
Any other Sudbury memories from the past? No? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.